The fellowship hall smelled of green bean casserole and burnt coffee, same as every Christmas potluck for the past 20 years. Red tablecloths covered the long tables, and the yellow overhead lights made everything look warm and familiar. I was reaching for another piece of Martha's cornbread when Linda's voice cut through the gentle chatter like a knife through butter. "Anyone want to trade husbands?" she called out, loud enough for half the congregation to hear. She stood by the gift exchange table, holding a wrapped present, that bright smile of hers lighting up her face. "I'll throw in the garage for free." A few folks chuckled, the way you do when someone makes a joke that's not quite funny. But then, Carl Brennan, our neighbor from across the street, looked up from his plate of ham and said, "I'll take that deal, Linda. Been waiting years for you to say that." The room went quiet as a graveyard. That silence stretched like taffy. I could hear the church furnace humming in the basement, could smell the lingering scent of Linda's apple pie from our table. Every eye in that room found my face, and I felt something inside me shrivel up like a leaf in frost. Linda's laugh came out high and nervous. "Oh, Carl, you're terrible. I was just joking around." But Carl wasn't laughing anymore. He was looking at my wife with eyes that knew things I didn't, and his smile had teeth in it. "Course you were, Linda. Just saying, if you ever change your mind." Pastor Williams cleared his throat and started talking about the children's Christmas program, but the damage was done. Whispers started up like rustling leaves, and I caught fragments. "Did you hear? Poor Frank. Wonder how long." I set down my cornbread and walked out. Didn't say a word to anybody, just pushed through the double doors into the December cold. The parking lot was empty except for our pickup and a few other trucks. Snow crunched under my boots, and my breath came out in white puffs. 43 years of marriage, and Linda had just offered to trade me away like a piece of used farm equipment. In front of the whole church, no less. "Frank," I turned around. Deacon Mills was standing in the doorway, his gray coat hanging open. Harold Mills had been sorting mail for 30 years before he retired, and he had the kind of eyes that noticed when things weren't where they belonged. "You okay, son?" Son. I was 67 years old, but Harold still called me son. Made something tight in my chest loosen up just a hair. "Been better, Harold." He walked over, his shoes making that squeaking sound on the packed snow. That was a hell of a thing to say. Linda's got a mouth on her sometimes. Harold studied my face like he was reading an envelope. "Frank, how long has this been going on?" "What do you mean?" "I mean Linda leaving church early every Sunday for the past 2 months. I mean her checking her phone during pastor's sermons. I mean Carl Brennan knowing exactly what to say when she handed him that opening." The cold air bit at my lungs. "You've been watching my wife?" "I've been watching my friend get hurt, and I don't like it." Before I could answer, the church doors opened and Linda came out, looking around until she spotted us. She walked over with that same bright smile, but it looked painted on now. "There you are. I was wondering where you got to." She glanced at Harold, then back at me. "Ready to go home?" "We were just talking," Harold said. "Well, don't let us keep you." Linda's voice had an edge to it, sharp as January wind. "I'm sure you've got better things to do than stand around in the cold." Harold looked at me for a long moment, then nodded. "You know where to find me, Frank." He walked away, and Linda watched him go. When she turned back to me, her smile was softer. "What was that about?" "Nothing much." "Good. You know how Harold likes to stick his nose where it doesn't belong?" We got in the truck, and Linda turned the heat up full blast. The radio was playing some Christmas song, all bells and cheer, but it felt like listening to music from another planet. "Frank, honey, I'm sorry about what I said back there. You know I was just being silly." I started the engine and backed out of the parking space. "Uh-huh." Carl was being inappropriate, and I was mortified. "You believe me, don't you?" Her phone buzzed in her purse, once, then again. "Don't you?" she asked. I pulled onto Main Street, the truck's wipers pushing snow off the windshield. "Sure, Linda." But as we drove home through the white, quiet streets, her phone kept buzzing. And each time it did, she reached for her purse a little too quick, like she was expecting something. Or someone. Christmas morning came gray and cold. I woke up at 5 like always, made coffee in the dark kitchen while Linda slept in. The house felt different somehow, like the walls were holding their breath. Linda came down around 7, still in her robe, hair all mussed up. She poured herself coffee and sat across from me at the kitchen table. For a few minutes, we just sat there listening to the old clock tick. "Frank," she said finally, "about last night. What about it? I've been thinking about what I said, and I feel terrible." Her eyes got watery the way they did when she was working up to something. I don't know what got into me. Must have been the eggnog. I'd seen Linda put away 3 glasses of punch, not a drop of rum in any of them. Carl was so rude, jumping on what I said like that. Made my skin crawl, honest to God. She reached across the table and put her hand on mine. Her fingers were cold, and there was something nervous in her touch. "You know I love you, don't you? 43 years, Frank. That's got to count for something." I wanted to believe her. Wanted it so bad, I could taste it, bitter as burnt coffee. "Of course I know that." "Good." She squeezed my hand. "Let's just forget the whole thing happened." Around 10, we heard a car in the driveway. Linda jumped up like she'd been stung, then relaxed when she saw Emma getting out of a little red Honda. Our granddaughter was home from college for Christmas break, 20 years old and smart as a whip. "Grandpa!" Emma hugged me hard, smelling like shampoo and that vanilla perfume she liked. "Merry Christmas!" Linda hugged her too, but I noticed she kept glancing toward the window, like she was expecting someone else. We opened presents in the living room, same as always. Emma gave me a book about old car engines. Linda got her some fancy lotion from the college bookstore. For a while, things felt normal. Emma chattered about her classes, Linda made breakfast, and I almost convinced myself that Harold Mills was seeing problems where there weren't any. But then, Linda's phone started buzzing on the kitchen counter. The first time, she ignored it. The second time, she glanced at it and frowned. The third time, she picked it up and said, "I need to call your Aunt Sarah back. She's probably worried about the snow." She went into the bedroom and closed the door. I could hear her voice through the thin walls, but not the words. Emma was washing dishes, humming some song I didn't recognize. "Grandpa, is everything okay?" I looked at her. Emma had her mother's eyes, brown and sharp, and right now they were worried. "Why do you ask?" "I don't know. Grandma seems different, and you're quieter than usual." Before I could answer, Linda came back out. "Sarah's fine. Roads are clear down in Columbus." Her phone buzzed again almost immediately. This time the look that crossed her face was pure panic before she caught herself. "Popular Day," I said. "You know how it is at Christmas. Everyone wants to chat." But when the phone buzzed again, 20 minutes later, she didn't answer it at all, just sat there staring at it like it might bite her. That afternoon, Emma and I went out to the garage to look at my old Chevy. I'd been restoring her for 10 years, and Emma always liked to hear about the progress. We were under the hood when Emma said, real quiet, "Grandpa, I saw something." "What's that?" "Grandma's phone. When she left it on the counter." Emma's voice was careful, like she was walking on ice. There were a bunch of text messages, all from the same person. My hands went still on the carburetor. Who? Someone named Carl. The wrench slipped from my fingers and clanged on the concrete floor. The sound echoed in the quiet garage, sharp and final. "Emma, maybe you shouldn't—" I wasn't snooping, I swear, but the screen lit up when it buzzed, and I couldn't help seeing. She looked up at me with those worried brown eyes. There were a lot of them, Grandpa, going back months. And that evening, after Emma had gone to her friend's house and Linda was in the shower, I found her phone charging on the kitchen counter. I'd never looked at Linda's phone before, didn't even know her passcode, but the screen lit up when I touched it, and there at the top was a message preview. Tuesday, same time, same place. See. I heard the shower turn off upstairs, heard Linda's footsteps on the bathroom floor. When she came down 10 minutes later, toweling her hair, I was sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee. "Phone's been quiet," I said. "Thank goodness, I swear, sometimes I want to throw that thing in the river." She hung the towel on the back of a chair. "It was charging all night, didn't hear a peep from it." The doorbell rang. Linda froze, the towel halfway to the closet. Who could that be? I got up and walked to the front door. Through the frosted glass, I could see Harold Mills standing on the porch, a tackle box in his hand. "It's Harold. What does he want?" Linda's voice had gone tight. I opened the door. Harold stomped his boots on the mat and came inside, bringing the smell of cold air and snow with him. "Evening, Frank. Linda." He nodded to my wife, who was standing in the kitchen doorway like she was ready to bolt. "Mind if I sit down? Got some things I think you ought to see." Linda forced a smile. "Harold, we were just about to." "This won't take long." Harold set his tackle box on the coffee table and looked at Linda. "Matter of fact, Might be better if it was just Frank and me. I'm not going anywhere. Linda's chin came up, defiant. This is my house, too. Suit yourself. Harold opened the tackle box. Inside, instead of fishing lures, were manila folders organized neat as you please. Frank, you know I worked for the Postal Service 30 years, got in the habit of noticing patterns. He pulled out the top folder and opened it. Inside were photographs, the kind you print at the drugstore. The first one showed Linda and Carl sitting in a booth at Murphy's Diner, 2 towns over. Their hands were on the table, fingers intertwined. Linda went white as sheet. That's not what it looks like. No? Harold flipped to the next photo, Linda and Carl walking into the Pineview Motel. How about this one? My chest felt tight, like someone was squeezing my ribs. When did you take these? 2 weeks ago, but Frank, this goes back a lot further than that. Harold pulled out a small notebook, the kind he used to use for his mail routes. I started paying attention after Linda began leaving church early every Sunday. Always the same excuse, checking on her sister in Columbus. I do check on Sarah. Maybe so, but you also meet Carl Brennan at Murphy's Diner every Tuesday at 2 o'clock. Been doing it for near 2 years now. 2 years? The number hit me like a physical blow. 2 years of Tuesday errands, 2 years of early Sunday departures, 2 years of me being the only fool in town who didn't know my wife was stepping out. Harold, I said, my voice coming out rough. Why didn't you... Tell you? Frank, you think I wanted to be the one? I hoped maybe I was wrong, maybe there was some other explanation. He looked at Linda, and his eyes were sad. Kept hoping it would end on its own. Linda had backed up against the kitchen counter. You had no right to spy on me. I had every right to protect my friend. Harold's voice was steady, but there was steel underneath. And Frank, there's more. Things you need to know about Carl. He pulled out another folder, this one thicker. Carl Brennan's been in Millfield for 5 years. Know where he came from? Oakton, about 60 miles south. Know why he left? I shook my head. His name came up in an investigation. 3 elderly couples there got taken for everything they had. Property transfers, forged signatures, the whole 9 yards. Nothing they could prove in court, but the pattern was clear enough. What kind of pattern? Carl gets close to married women whose husbands own valuable property, real estate, businesses, that sort of thing, starts an affair, convinces the woman her husband doesn't appreciate her, then comes the paperwork, wills, property transfers, power of attorney documents. Always some good reason for the husband to sign. The room felt like it was spinning. You think Carl's after our property? Frank, your corner lot and garage are worth more than most folks make in 10 years. Prime commercial real estate. Harold looked at Linda again. Bet he's already talked to you about protecting your future, hasn't he? Making sure you're taken care of. Linda's face gave her away before she could say a word. Jesus Christ, I whispered. There's more. Harold pulled out a business card. Woman named Martha Henderson in Oakton. Husband died suddenly of a heart attack 3 years ago, right after signing over his farm to a business partner. Guess who that partner was? I took the card with shaking hands. The implications were settling in like ice water in my veins. Harold, what are you saying? I'm saying Carl Brennan is a predator, Frank, and you're not his first target. He closed the folder and looked me straight in the eye. Question is, what are you going to do about it? Linda pushed away from the counter. This is insane. You can't prove any of this. Can't I? Harold reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a small digital recorder. 2 hours ago, I had coffee with Mrs. Henderson. Want to hear what she told me about Carl's methods? The silence stretched out like a held breath. Outside, wind rattled the windows and the house creaked around us like old bones. Frank, Linda said, her voice small now. Don't listen to him. He's jealous. He's trying to... Enough. The word came out harder than I meant it to. Just enough. I stood up and walked to the phone on the kitchen wall. My brother Tom's number was written on a piece of paper taped to the refrigerator. We hadn't talked in 5 years, not since our last argument about Dad's estate. Who are you calling? Linda asked. I dialed the number and waited. After 4 rings, a familiar voice answered. Tom, it's Frank. I need your help. Tom made the drive from Cincinnati in under 3 hours, which meant he'd pushed his old BMW hard through the December night. I heard the car pull into the driveway around 11, the engine ticking as it cooled. Linda had gone to bed an hour earlier, claiming a headache, but I could hear her moving around upstairs, restless as a cat in a thunderstorm. When I opened the door, my brother looked older than I remembered. Tom was 2 years younger than me, but retirement hadn't been kind to him. His hair had gone completely gray, and there were new lines around his eyes. Still, when he stepped into the warm house and looked at me, I saw the same steady expression that used to get us both out of trouble when we were kids. Frank. He set down a leather briefcase and shook my hand. Been too long. Appreciate you coming. On the phone, you said something about financial documents? Harold had gone home after Linda disappeared upstairs, but he'd left his tackle box and all the evidence. I led Tom to the kitchen table and spread out the papers Linda had been asking me to sign over the past few months. Property tax forms, insurance updates, what she'd called estate planning documents. Tom pulled reading glasses from his shirt pocket and sat down. For 35 years, he'd been a loan officer at First National Bank in Cincinnati, and watching him examine those papers was like watching a mechanic look under a hood. He knew exactly where to focus. Jesus, Frank. And he looked up after 10 minutes. Tell me you didn't sign this one. He held up a document titled Quitclaim Deed. My signature was at the bottom, though I couldn't remember signing it. What is it? It transfers your property to Linda, all of it. The house, the garage, everything. Tom flipped through the pages. According to this, you signed it 3 weeks ago. My stomach dropped. Linda said it was for tax purposes. Something about protecting assets. Protecting assets, my ass. This strips you of any legal claim to property you've owned for 40 years. Tom set the document aside and picked up another one. And this beauty here is a power of attorney, giving Linda full authority to make financial decisions on your behalf. She said it was in case something happened to me. Something's going to happen to you, all right. You're going to lose everything you own. Tom leaned back in his chair. Frank, these documents are designed to do one thing: transfer your assets to Linda so she can do whatever she wants with them, including giving them to someone else. The kitchen felt cold, despite the furnace running. How do you know all this? Because I've seen it before. Usually it's adult children taking advantage of aging parents, but the mechanism is the same. Get the victim to sign papers they don't understand, then liquidate everything before anyone figures out what happened. Tom pulled out his phone and started scrolling through something. You said the man's name is Carl Brennan. That's right. And he's been involved with Linda for how long? Harold thinks about 2 years. Tom nodded and kept scrolling. I'm looking at real estate records for the county. Brennan purchased his house 5 years ago for $180,000, paid cash. He looked up at me. Frank, where does a man get that kind of money if he's not independently wealthy? I don't know. What's he do for work? According to the county assessor, he's listed as a consultant. No specific employer. Tom set down his phone. You know what I think? I think Carl Brennan has done this before. Multiple times. Before I could respond, we heard footsteps on the stairs. Linda appeared in the doorway wearing her robe and slippers. Her hair was messed up like she'd been trying to sleep, but her eyes were wide awake. Tom, she forced a smile. I didn't know you were coming. Linda. Tom's voice was polite but cool. Frank called me about some financial questions. Oh, those old papers? Frank worries too much about everything. She moved toward the coffee maker. Anyone want coffee? Linda, I said, Tom's been looking at these documents you had me sign. Her hands stilled on the coffee canister. What about them? Tom held up the quitclaim deed. This document transfers Frank's property rights to you, all of them. Was he aware of that when he signed it? Of course he was. We discussed it thoroughly. But Linda's voice had gone tight, defensive. It's just estate planning, Tom. Something you'd understand if you'd ever been married. That was a low blow. Tom's wife had left him 15 years ago, and he'd never remarried. You're right. I've never been married, Tom said calmly. But I spent 35 years at a bank, and I know fraud when I see it. Linda's face went white. How dare you? I dare, because someone needs to protect my brother. Tom stood up, and suddenly the kitchen felt smaller. Linda, this power of attorney gives you complete control over Frank's finances. Combined with the property transfer, you could sell everything he owns and he'd have no legal recourse. That's ridiculous. I would never... No. Tom pulled out his phone again. Because according to the county clerk's office, you have an appointment tomorrow at 2 o'clock with a notary public. Want to guess what kind of documents you'll be filing? The coffee canister slipped from Linda's hands and hit the floor with a bang, coffee grounds scattering across the linoleum. How did you... She stopped herself, but the damage was done. How did I know about your appointment? Because when someone's about to commit real estate fraud, they have to schedule it in advance. Tom's voice was deadly quiet. Linda, what exactly were you planning to do tomorrow? Linda knelt down and started sweeping up coffee grounds with her hands. I don't know what you're talking about. I think you do. Tom sat back down and spread out the documents again. See, the thing about this kind of scheme is it requires perfect timing. You get the victim to sign the initial documents months in advance when they trust you. Then when you're ready to make your move, you file everything at once so there's no time for second thoughts. I felt like I was watching this happen to someone else. Tom, what are you saying? I'm saying Linda's been planning to clean you out for months, maybe longer. He looked at my wife, who was still picking up coffee grounds. The only question is whether she's working alone or if she has help. Linda stood up slowly, coffee grounds falling from her hands. Frank, don't listen to him. He's trying to turn you against me. I don't need to turn him against you. You've done that yourself. Tom gathered up the documents. Frank, tomorrow morning we're going to the county courthouse to file papers revoking all of these documents. Then we're going to the police. You can't prove anything, Linda said. Can't I? Tom pulled out his wallet and extracted a business card. Before I drove up here, I made some calls. Turns out there's a pattern of real estate fraud following Carl Brennan from town to town. 3 other jurisdictions are very interested in talking to him. Linda stared at the business card like it was a snake. And Linda? Tom's voice was gentle now, almost sad. They're interested in talking to you, too. The kitchen clock ticked loud in the silence. Outside, wind howled around the house, and somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Linda stood there in her robe and slippers, coffee grounds at her feet, looking smaller than I'd ever seen her. Frank, she whispered. I can explain. But I was looking at my brother, this man I hadn't spoken to in 5 years, who'd dropped everything and driven through the night to help me. And I was thinking about Harold Mills, sorting through evidence in his tackle box because he cared about protecting a friend. No, I said finally. I don't think you can. Linda's face crumpled. She turned and ran upstairs, and a few seconds later we heard the bedroom door slam. Tom and I sat in the quiet kitchen, surrounded by papers and the smell of spilled coffee. Tom, I said. I'm sorry about what she said. About you never being married. He waved it off. Water under the bridge. And I'm sorry about everything, the way we left things after Dad died. Tom was quiet for a moment. Frank, we're family. Family looks out for each other. He gestured toward the documents. Even when they've been stupid enough to nearly give away everything they own. Despite everything, I almost smiled. So what do we do now? Tom checked his watch. It was almost midnight. Now we figure out how to stop this before it's too late. Emma came back around noon the next day, stomping snow off her boots and bringing the cold smell of winter into the house. Linda was in the bedroom with the door closed, claiming she had a migraine. Tom was at the kitchen table with his laptop, making phone calls to police departments in 3 counties. Grandpa, what's going on? Emma hung up her coat and looked around. Grandma's car isn't in the driveway, and there's a strange car out there. That's your Uncle Tom's car. He drove up from Cincinnati last night. Emma's eyebrows went up. Uncle Tom? I haven't seen him since I was little. Tom looked up from his laptop and smiled. Hello, Emma. You've grown up quite a bit. Hi. She looked between us, sensing the tension. Is everything okay? I glanced at Tom, and he nodded. Emma, sit down. There's some things you need to know. So I told her. About the affair, about the property transfers, about Carl's pattern of targeting elderly couples. Emma listened without interrupting, her face getting more serious with each detail. That son of a bitch, she said when I finished. Emma, no, Grandpa, that's what he is, and Grandma. She shook her head. I knew something was wrong yesterday. The way she kept checking her phone, the way she acted when it buzzed. Tom closed his laptop. Emma, we could use your help with something, but it means going against your grandmother. What kind of help? The kind that might save your grandfather from losing everything he's worked for. Emma didn't hesitate. What do you need me to do? Tom explained about modern digital evidence, about text message records and phone data. The police will eventually get access to all that, but it takes time. Time we don't have if your grandmother follows through with her plan today. You want me to look at her phone? Only if you're comfortable with it. This is family business, Emma. Complicated family business. Emma was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, her jaw was set in a way that reminded me of her mother. Grandpa, do you remember what you told me when I was little, about standing up for what's right even when it's hard? I remember. Well, this is hard, but it's right. She stood up. Where's her phone? Linda's phone was charging on the counter, same as always. Emma picked it up and her face went pale. Grandpa, you need to see this. She handed me the phone. The screen showed a text conversation with Carl that went back months. I scrolled up, my hands shaking, reading messages that got more intimate and more damning with each swipe. Linda, Frank signed the insurance papers today. He doesn't suspect anything. Carl, good. Everything will be ready by Wednesday. Pack light. Linda, what about Emma? She's asking questions. Carl, she's a kid. She'll get over it. Linda, sometimes I feel bad about this. Carl, you want to spend the rest of your life married to a boring old mechanic? I'm offering you a real life. Florida beaches, nice restaurants, everything you deserve. Linda, you're right. Frank will be fine. He's tougher than he looks. Carl, don't go soft on me now. We're too close. The most recent message was from this morning. Carl, everything's set for 2 p.m. After we file the papers, we're gone. Frank will sign anything if you cry enough. I handed the phone back to Emma, feeling sick. There's more, she said quietly. Look at this one from last week. She scrolled to another conversation. Linda, Emma's here for Christmas. She's been watching me. Carl, so? She's your granddaughter. She's not going to rat out family. Linda, you don't know Emma. She's got her grandfather's stubborn streak. Carl, then maybe it's time to speed things up. Tom was reading over my shoulder. Jesus Christ, they're planning to leave today. There's one more, Emma said. Her voice was shaking now. From yesterday, after Uncle Tom showed up. Linda, Tom's here. He knows about the documents. Carl, how much does he know? Linda, everything. He's a banker. He figured it out. Carl, then we move now. Get Frank out of the house and meet me at the courthouse. Linda, how am I supposed to get him out of the house? Carl, I don't care. Tell him there's a family emergency. Tell him anything. But if those papers don't get filed today, we're both screwed. Emma set the phone down with a shaking hand. Grandpa, they're going to steal everything you own and disappear. I looked at this young woman, barely out of her teens, who'd just chosen to protect me over her own grandmother. The weight of that choice, the courage it took, hit me like a physical blow. Emma, I'm sorry you had to see all this. Don't apologize, Grandpa. I'm glad I know the truth. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. What do we do now? Tom was already reaching for his phone. Now we stopped them. The next hour passed in a blur of phone calls and planning. Tom contacted the county clerk's office and learned that Linda's appointment was still scheduled for 2 o'clock. He called the police, but they said without evidence of an actual crime, they couldn't do much beyond taking a report. What we need, Tom said, is to catch them in the act, or better yet, get them to confess. How do we do that? By making them think they've won. Around 1:30, we heard Linda's footsteps on the stairs. She came into the kitchen wearing her good coat and carrying her purse, looking like she was heading out for a normal afternoon errand. Frank, I need to run into town. Some business at the bank. Tom and I exchanged glances. Emma was in the living room, pretending to read a book. What kind of business, Wishel? I asked. Just some paperwork. Nothing important. Linda's smile was bright and false. I'll be back in an hour or so. I'll come with you. Oh, that's not necessary. It's just boring financial stuff. I don't mind. For a second, Linda's mask slipped, and I saw panic underneath. Frank, please, I need some time to think about everything Tom said last night. It was a good lie. Believable, even sympathetic. If I hadn't seen those text messages, I might have fallen for it. All right, I said. Take your time. Linda kissed my cheek, the same way she had for 43 years. Thank you for understanding. After she left, Tom and I waited 5 minutes, then followed in his BMW. The courthouse was a 10-minute drive, and we parked across the street where we could watch the entrance. At exactly 2 o'clock, Linda's car pulled into the parking lot. Carl was waiting for her, leaning against his truck like he didn't have a care in the world. They walked into the courthouse together, Linda carrying a manila envelope. "That's it," Tom said. "She's filing the papers." My phone rang. Emma. "Grandpa, where are you?" "Courthouse. Why?" "Because Carl's at your house. He's in the garage." My blood went cold. "What?" "I saw him through the window. He's got a crowbar, and he's breaking into your toolbox." "Emma, get out of the house. Right now." "But—" "Right now, Emma. Go to the neighbors and call the police." Tom was already starting the car. "Frank, what's happening?" "Carl's at the house. He's breaking in." We made the drive in 7 minutes, Tom's BMW flying through the streets like we were chasing fire. My garage door was open and Carl's truck was in the driveway. Through the open door, I could see him ransacking my workbench, throwing tools around like he was looking for something specific. "What's he after?" Tom asked. Then I remembered. In my toolbox, underneath the socket, wrenches and screwdrivers, I kept the title to my truck and the deed to my property. Original documents Linda didn't know about. We got out of the car, and Carl looked up from the mess he'd made. His face was flushed, and there was sweat on his forehead despite the cold. "Frank?" He straightened up, still holding my crowbar. "Didn't expect you back so soon." "What are you doing in my garage, Carl?" "Just looking for something Linda said I could borrow." His smile was all teeth, no warmth. "Some paperwork she needed for the bank." "What paperwork would that be?" Carl's smile faded. "Look, Frank, this doesn't have to be complicated. Linda's made her choice. You can fight it, or you can make it easy on everyone." "Seems like you've already made it complicated, breaking into my garage." "I didn't break anything. Door was open." Tom stepped up beside me. "Actually, Carl, destroying private property is a felony, just like fraud." Carl looked at Tom like he was seeing him for the first time. "Who the hell are you?" "Frank's brother, and a former banker who knows exactly what you and Linda have been up to." Carl's grip tightened on the crowbar. "You don't know shit. I know you've done this before. Oakton, Millerville, now here. Same pattern every time. Find a lonely wife, convince her she deserves better, then clean out the husband's assets." "Prove it." "I don't have to. The police will do that." Tom pulled out his phone. "Matter of fact, they should be here any minute." That's when Carl's composure finally cracked. "You son of a bitch. You think you can just waltz in here and ruin everything? I think I can protect my brother from a con man." Carl raised the crowbar, and for a second I thought he might actually swing it, but then we heard sirens in the distance, getting closer. "This isn't over," Carl said. "Yes, it is." I took a step forward and Carl backed toward his truck. "Carl, you picked the wrong family to steal from." The sirens were getting louder. Carl threw the crowbar on the ground and ran for his truck, but it was too late. 2 police cars turned into our street, lights flashing. I watched them arrest Carl Brennan in my driveway, and all I felt was tired. Tired and old and grateful for the brother standing next to me. "Tom," I said, "thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We still have to deal with Linda." I thought about my wife, sitting in some courthouse office, probably wondering why Carl hadn't called. Thought about 43 years of marriage ending in handcuffs and fraud charges. "Frank?" Tom was watching my face. "You okay?" I wasn't okay. Might not be okay for a long time. But I was still standing, and that had to count for something. "Yeah," I said. "I'm okay." But even as I said it, I knew the hardest part was still coming. Linda came home 2 hours later, and I knew from the way she slammed the car door that things hadn't gone according to plan. Tom and I were sitting in the kitchen, drinking coffee and waiting. Emma was at the neighbor's house giving her statement to the police. The silence in the house felt heavy as a funeral shroud. Linda walked through the front door and stopped cold when she saw us sitting there. Her face was pale, and there were dark circles under her eyes like she hadn't slept in days. "Where's Carl?" she asked. "Jail," Tom said. Linda's purse slipped from her shoulder and hit the floor with a thud. "What?" "Police arrested him for breaking and entering, also got a fraud warrant from the county prosecutor." And Tom's voice was steady, matter of fact. "Seems they've been building a case against him for months." Linda sank into the chair across from me, and for the first time in 2 years, she looked her age. 63 years old and tired, the bright facade finally cracking. "Frank," she whispered, "I can explain. Can you?" I set down my coffee cup, surprised by how steady my hands were. "Can you explain 2 years of lying? Can you explain planning to steal my property and run off to Florida?" Her eyes widened. How did you— Your phone, Linda. Emma read your text messages. Emma had no right. Emma had every right to protect her grandfather from thieves. The word hung in the air between us. Thieves. That's what my wife had become. Linda's face crumpled, and tears started flowing. Real tears this time. Not the calculated kind she'd been using for months. Frank, you don't understand. I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I was lonely. Frank, you're always in that garage working on that stupid car. When was the last time we really talked? When was the last time you looked at me like I mattered? There was truth in what she said, and it cut deeper than I expected. How long had it been since I'd really seen my wife? When had we stopped talking about anything besides groceries and bills and whose turn it was to take out the trash? So, you decided to have an affair. It wasn't supposed to be an affair. Carl was just— He listened to me. He made me feel interesting again. Linda wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. But then he started talking about the future, about how we could be together if I wasn't tied down by all this. By me, you mean? By a life that never changes. Frank, when was the last time we went anywhere? Did anything spontaneous? You've been working on that same car for 10 years. That car is a 1907 Chevelle. They don't make them anymore. Neither do they make me anymore. Linda's voice rose, angry now instead of sad. I'm 63 years old, Frank. How many good years do I have left? Carl offered me adventure, excitement, a chance to feel alive again. And all it cost was everything I've worked for my whole life. Linda was quiet for a moment, staring at her hands. When she looked up, there was something different in her eyes, harder. Maybe you deserved it, she said. The words hit me like a physical blow. Tom made a sound in his throat, but I held up a hand to stop him. What did you say? You heard me. Maybe you deserved it. 43 years, Frank. 43 years of the same routine, the same conversations, the same life. Do you know what that does to a person? It builds something. It creates a foundation. It creates a prison. Linda stood up, her chair scraping against the linoleum. Carl showed me what life could be like. Real life, not this existence, by stealing from me, by freeing us both. You'd have been fine, Frank. You'd have had your garage, and your stupid car, and your precious routines. I'd have had a chance to live. I stared at my wife of 43 years and realized I was looking at a stranger. This woman who'd shared my bed and my table and my life had been planning to destroy me, and she thought I deserved it. Linda, I said quietly, get out. What? Get out of my house. Now. Frank, be reasonable. Be reasonable? I stood up, and Linda took a step back. You planned to steal my property and abandon me with nothing. Your boyfriend broke into my garage. You've been lying to me for 2 years, and you think I deserved it. What exactly should I be reasonable about? This is my house, too. No, Tom interrupted. Actually, it's not. Those property transfers you filed today? They were rejected. Turns out you need notarized signatures from both spouses for that kind of transaction. Linda's face went white. That's impossible. The county clerk called an hour ago. Seems someone tipped them off about potential fraud. Tom smiled grimly. Amazing how civic-minded people can be when they know what to look for. Linda looked back and forth between us, and I could see her calculating, trying to figure out her next move. Frank, please, we can work this out. Carl manipulated me, made me think. No. I walked to the kitchen counter and picked up her purse, handed it to her. We're done, Linda. 43 years, and we're done. Where am I supposed to go? That's not my problem anymore. Linda clutched her purse to her chest like a shield. Frank, you can't just throw me out. I'm your wife. You stopped being my wife the day you decided to steal from me. She looked at Tom, maybe hoping for support, but his face was stone. Then she looked back at me, and for a second I saw the woman I'd married all those years ago. Young and pretty and full of dreams I'd apparently never been enough to fulfill. Frank, she said, her voice small. I'm sorry. And I believed her. That was the worst part. I believed she was sorry. Sorry she got caught. Sorry her plan failed. Sorry she was facing consequences. But I didn't believe she was sorry for what she'd done to me. I know you are, I said. But sorry doesn't fix this. Linda walked to the door, then turned back. What happens now? Now you leave. Tonight, don't come back. And then what? You're just going to pretend none of this happened? I thought about that for a moment, about the whispers at church, about the neighbors who'd known what was happening before I did, about living in this house with the ghost of our marriage haunting every room. No, I said finally. I'm not going to pretend anything. Something in my voice made Linda nervous. What does that mean? It means people need to know what Carl Brennan really is, what he was trying to do, how he operates. Frank, don't. There are other couples out there, Linda. Other men like me who trust their wives and don't see what's coming. Carl's going to prison, but his methods are still out there. Someone needs to warn people. You can't prove I knew about the other couples, can't I? I looked at my wife one last time. Sunday is New Year's Day. Pastor Williams always does testimony time during the service. I think I might have something to share with the congregation. Linda's face went dead white. You wouldn't. Try me. She stared at me for a long moment, then walked out without another word. I heard her car start up, heard the tires spinning on the icy driveway as she backed out too fast. Tom and I sat in the quiet kitchen for a while, listening to the house settle around us. The coffee had gone cold, but neither of us moved to make fresh. Frank, Tom said finally, you okay? I thought about it. Was I okay? My marriage was over. My wife had tried to steal everything I owned. In 3 days, I'd gone from thinking I had a secure future to being alone in a house that felt too big and too quiet. No, I said, I'm not okay, but I will be. You sure about the church thing? That's a big step. Tom, you know what the worst part is? It's not the affair. It's not even the money. I looked at my brother, this man who'd driven through the night to help me. It's that I let it happen. I was so busy with my routines, so comfortable in my little world, that I stopped paying attention to what mattered. That doesn't make what she did right. No, but it makes me partly responsible. And if I'm partly responsible for what happened to me, then I'm also responsible for making sure it doesn't happen to anyone else. Tom nodded slowly. The other couples Carl targeted. And the couples he might target next. Men like me who think they're safe because they've been married forever. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at Carl's empty house across the street. Someone needs to tell the truth, Tom. All of it. Even the parts that make me look like a fool. That takes courage. No, I said. It takes necessity. I went to the phone and dialed the church office. Pastor Williams answered on the second ring. Pastor, it's Frank Morrison. I'd like to speak during testimony time on Sunday. Of course, Frank. What about? I looked around my kitchen, at the scattered papers on the table, at the coffee stains Linda had left on the counter that morning, at the evidence of a life that had just fallen apart. About protecting the people we love, I said, and about the dangers of taking trust for granted. After I hung up, Tom and I sat in the gathering dusk, two brothers who'd found each other again just in time. Outside, snow was beginning to fall, covering Carl's tire tracks in the driveway, starting the long work of making everything clean again. But first there was Sunday to get through. First there was the truth to tell. Sunday morning came clear and cold, the kind of January day that makes everything look sharp-edged and clean. I put on my good suit, the navy one I wore to weddings and funerals, and drove to church alone for the first time in 43 years. The parking lot was fuller than usual for New Year's Day service. Word had gotten around, it always does in a small town, that something had happened with the Morrisons and Carl Brennan. Folks were curious, the way people get when their neighbor's private business becomes public spectacle. I sat in my usual pew, third row from the front on the right side. Linda's space beside me felt like a missing tooth. Harold Mills slid in next to me, wearing his best suit and a grim expression. You sure about this, Frank? Sure as I've ever been about anything. Good, because I called that detective in Oakton yesterday. Martha Henderson is driving up for the service. Wants to hear what you have to say. I looked around and spotted a woman I didn't recognize sitting near the back, gray-haired, maybe 70, with the kind of straight posture that spoke of inner strength. Our eyes met for a moment, and she nodded. Pastor Williams called for testimony time after the singing. 3 people spoke before me. Mrs. Patterson thanked God for her grandson's safe return from deployment. Old Jim Crawford talked about beating pneumonia, and Sally Burke shared about her daughter's new baby. Then Pastor Williams looked at me. Frank Morrison has asked to share something with us today. I stood up and walked to the front, my legs steadier than I'd expected. The congregation was quiet, waiting. These were people I'd known for decades, who'd watched me grow old, who'd shared potlucks and funerals and Christmas pageants with Linda and me. Most of you know that my wife Linda and I are having some difficulties, I began. My voice carried well in the small sanctuary. What you might not know is that those difficulties involve criminal fraud, theft, and a man who's been systematically targeting elderly couples in our community. A murmur ran through the congregation. I saw shocked faces, worried whispers. 3 days ago, I discovered that Linda has been having an affair with our neighbor, Carl Brennan, for nearly 2 years. But this wasn't just about infidelity. Carl convinced Linda to help him steal my property, our home, my garage, everything I've worked for, through forged documents and fraudulent transfers. The murmurs got louder. I saw Pastor Williams lean forward in his chair. Carl Brennan isn't just a cheating neighbor. He's a predator who targets vulnerable couples. He's done this before in at least 3 other communities. His method is always the same. Identify couples where the wife feels neglected or unappreciated, seduce her, convince her that her husband doesn't deserve what he has, then manipulate her into signing over property rights. Martha Henderson stood up in the back. "May I speak?" Pastor Williams nodded, and the gray-haired woman walked forward. Her voice was clear and strong. "My name is Martha Henderson. I live in Oakton, about 60 miles from here. 3 years ago, Carl Brennan convinced my late husband to sign over our farm to him as a business investment. 2 weeks later, my husband died of a heart attack. The stress of realizing he'd been cheated killed him. Carl disappeared with our property, and I lost everything." The sanctuary was dead silent now. You could hear the furnace humming in the basement, the creak of old wood settling. "Frank Morrison called me yesterday," Martha continued. "He wanted to warn me that Carl was here, in your community. But more than that, he wanted to make sure other people knew how this man operates, how he destroys families and steals lives." She looked directly at me. "Frank, you saved my faith in humanity. Not many men would risk public embarrassment to protect strangers." I felt something tight in my chest loosen. "Ma'am, it wasn't about protecting strangers. It was about protecting neighbors, friends, family." Tom stood up from his seat in the 4th row. "I'm Frank's brother. I'm a retired banker, and I can tell you that what Martha and Frank are describing is textbook elder fraud. It's becoming epidemic, and it destroys lives." Then Emma stood up, 20 years old and fierce as her grandmother never was. "Carl Brennan tried to steal my grandfather's life. But more than that, he tried to steal his dignity. Well, he failed. My grandfather is the strongest, most honest man I know, and everyone in this room should be proud to call him friend." One by one, people started standing. Harold Mills, his wife Nancy, the Petersons from across town, Jim Crawford still wheezing from his bout with pneumonia, Pastor Williams, Mrs. Patterson, Sally Burke. Soon the entire congregation was on their feet, and I was standing at the front of the church, overwhelmed by the support of people I'd been afraid to face. Pastor Williams stepped forward. "Frank, this community owes you a debt of gratitude. It takes courage to expose fraud, but it takes even more courage to expose it publicly when it involves your own family. Pastor, there's one more thing." I pulled a piece of paper from my jacket pocket. "Carl Brennan was arrested Thursday night for breaking and entering and fraud, but the police think there may be other victims, other couples he's targeted that we don't know about yet. I've written down the detective's contact information, and I'm asking anyone who's had suspicious contact with Carl or anyone like him to reach out." I held up the paper. Elder fraud is real, and it's happening everywhere. The best defense is knowledge. Know the warning signs. Talk to your families. Don't let shame or embarrassment keep you from getting help if you need it. After the service, people surrounded me in the fellowship hall. Handshakes, hugs, offers of help. 3 elderly couples approached quietly to say they'd noticed suspicious behavior from people they'd met recently, and they wanted to talk to the detective. Martha Henderson was the last to speak with me. "Frank, you did something remarkable today. You turned your pain into protection for others." Just felt like the right thing to do. It was, and I hope you know that Linda's choices don't reflect on you. Some people are just broken inside. They take from others because they don't know how to build anything themselves. Harold Mills appeared at my elbow. "Frank, there's something you should know. Police arrested Linda an hour ago. Turns out she and Carl had more assets hidden than anyone realized. Bank accounts in Florida, forged identification documents. This was bigger than just your property. I felt oddly empty at the news. Not happy, not sad, just finished. What happens now? Now they both face federal charges, and now this community knows how to protect itself. Harold looked around the fellowship hall, where people were still talking in small groups about warning signs and safety measures. You started something here today, Frank. Something important. As I drove home through the cold afternoon, I thought about Martha Henderson's words, about turning pain into protection, about choosing what to build from the ashes of what's been torn down. The house felt different when I walked in. Quieter, yes, but also cleaner somehow, like something poisonous had been drawn out of it. I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with the newspaper, same as I'd done for 20 years. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just going through the motions. I was choosing my life, instead of letting it choose me. Spring came early that year, arriving in March with warm rain that washed the last of winter's salt from the streets. By then, the legal business was mostly settled. The divorce was finalized in February. Linda didn't contest it, couldn't afford to with the federal charges hanging over her head. Carl got 8 years for fraud and racketeering. Turns out he and Linda had been running their scheme in 4 states over the past decade. Linda plea bargained down to 3 years in exchange for testimony against him. I kept the house, the garage, and what was left of my dignity. The '67 Chevelle was finally running again. "Sounds good, Grandpa." Emma was under the hood with me, her hands black with grease, wearing one of my old work shirts. She'd been spending most weekends with me since Christmas, claiming she needed quiet to study, but really just keeping an eye on her old grandfather. I didn't mind the company. "Timing's a little off," I said, listening to the engine idle, "but she'll get us where we need to go." Speaking of which, Mrs. Garcia called again. She wants to know if you can come by tomorrow to look at those papers her nephew wants her to sign. Mrs. Garcia was the 4th elderly person who'd contacted me since the church testimony. Word had spread beyond Millfield. Seems there were more Carl Brennans out there than anyone realized. I'd started spending one afternoon a week helping folks understand financial documents, spot warning signs, know when to call for help. "Tell her I'll be there at 2. Emma smiled and wiped her hands on a rag. "You know what I think, Grandpa?" "What's that?" "I think this is what you were meant to do. Help people. Protect them." I thought about that while I adjusted the carburetor. Maybe, or maybe I'm just trying to make something good come out of something bad. Same thing, isn't it? Harold Mills appeared in the garage doorway, carrying 2 cups of coffee and wearing his usual grin. "Afternoon, Frank. Emma." Harold had been coming by most Saturday afternoons, and we'd fallen into a comfortable routine. Coffee in the garage, chess on the kitchen table, supper, if he felt like staying. Sometimes Tom would drive up from Cincinnati, and we'd all sit on the porch, 3 old men talking about everything and nothing. "Harold, what brings you by today?" "Got a call from Detective Morrison in Columbus. They arrested 2 more people running the same kind of scheme Carl was using. Apparently your church testimony has been making rounds. Other communities are learning to spot the signs." Emma beamed. "See? I told you." I felt that familiar tightness in my chest, the one that came when I thought about how many people might be getting hurt while I was just going about my business. "How many victims this time?" 4 elderly couples. But Frank, here's the thing. They got caught before they could complete the thefts. The victims still have their property, their savings, their dignity. That's because of you. Harold handed me a coffee cup, and I noticed his hands were steadier than mine. "You did that," he continued, "by having the courage to tell the truth in front of people you've known your whole life." I sipped the coffee. Harold made it stronger than I liked, but I'd stopped complaining months ago. Wasn't courage, Harold? Was just necessity. Sometimes they're the same thing. Later that evening, after Emma had gone back to school and Harold had headed home, I sat on the front porch watching the sunset. The weather was warm enough that I didn't need a jacket, and the maple tree in the front yard was starting to bud. Across the street, Carl's house stood empty. There was a for sale sign in the yard, and the grass was already getting shaggy. In a few months, someone new would move in, and Carl Brennan would be nothing but a bad memory. My phone rang. "Tom." "Frank, how are you?" "Good. Real good, actually. I wanted to let you know, got a call from a lawyer in Indiana today. Seems there's a class action suit forming against a fraud ring that's been targeting elderly couples across the Midwest. They want you to testify." "About Carl and Linda?" "About the pattern, about how these operations work, how to spot them, how communities can protect themselves." Tom paused. Frank, you've become something of an expert on this. I thought about Mrs. Garcia and her nephew's suspicious paperwork, about the detective's call, about the four couples in Columbus who still had their homes because someone had taught their community what to look for. Tell them I'll do it. You sure? It means travel, depositions, media attention. Tom, if I can help one more family avoid what I went through, it's worth it. After I hung up, I sat in the gathering dusk and listened to the evening sounds, a dog barking somewhere, a car driving past, the creak of my porch swing as it moved in the breeze. Somewhere in the distance, the church bells rang the hour, 8 o'clock on a Saturday night in small-town America, and I was exactly where I belonged. Not because someone else had chosen this life for me, but because I had chosen it for myself. The next morning, I planted a garden where Linda's rose bushes used to grow. Tomatoes, green beans, corn, practical things that would feed me through the summer and fall. As I worked the soil, I thought about seeds and time and the slow work of growing something good. Emma had been right. This was what I was meant to do. Not the gardening, though that felt right too, but the protecting, the warning, the standing up and saying, this happened to me, and it doesn't have to happen to you. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd chosen. And for the first time, in longer than I cared to remember, that felt like enough. It's been 2 years now since that Christmas potluck changed everything, and I'm sitting on my front porch on a warm September evening watching the sun set over Main Street. The coffee in my hands is exactly the right temperature. Not too hot, not too cold, and it tastes better than it has in years. Funny how coffee tastes a lot different when you were drinking it because you want to, not because it's just what you do at 6 in the morning. People ask me sometimes if I'm lonely. Fair question, I suppose. Man my age, living alone after 43 years of marriage, might be expected to rattle around that empty house like a marble in a mason jar. But here's what I've learned. There's a world of difference between being alone and being lonely. Lonely is what I was before, sitting at that same kitchen table every morning with a woman who was planning to steal my life. Lonely is going through the motions of a marriage while your wife counts the days until she can disappear with your neighbor and your money. Lonely is everyone in town knowing your business except you. Being alone? Being alone is choosing your own company. It's drinking coffee at your own pace, working in your garden because you like the feel of soil under your fingernails, sitting on your porch at sunset because the light hits the maple tree just right. Emma comes by most weekends now, usually bringing some college friend who wants to hear about real life from an old mechanic. Tom drives up from Cincinnati once a month, and we've gotten good at the kind of easy conversation we never had when we were younger. Harold Mills and I have our Saturday afternoon chess games, and I'm finally winning about half the time. Last week, a young couple from 2 counties over drove all the way to Millfield to thank me. Seems they'd heard about Carl's scheme at their church, recognized the pattern when someone tried the same thing on the husband's elderly father. They stopped it before any damage was done, and now that father gets to keep his farm and his dignity. That's what this has all been about, I think. Dignity. Not the kind that comes from what other people think of you, but the kind that comes from knowing you've done right when doing right was hard. The kind that comes from turning your worst experience into someone else's protection. I've testified in 3 more court cases this year, helped start fraud prevention programs in 6 counties, and talked to more elderly couples than I can count. It's not work I ever expected to do, but it fits me like an old shirt. Comfortable, necessary, good. The church bells are ringing 8 o'clock now, same as they have every night for as long as I can remember. But tonight, they sound different somehow. Less like marking time and more like celebrating it. Like saying, here's another day you chose well, Frank Morrison. Here's another day you stood up when standing up mattered. Tomorrow, I'll drive over to see Mrs. Patterson about some insurance papers her son wants her to sign. Next week, I'm speaking at a community center in Springfield about recognizing elder fraud. Small things, maybe, but they add up to something bigger. The sun's almost gone now, just a thin line of gold on the horizon. Across the street, new neighbors are moving into Carl's old house, a young family with 2 little kids who ride bicycles in the driveway and wave when they see me on the porch. I wave back and finish my coffee, listening to the wind chimes Emma hung where Linda's bedroom curtains used to billow. They sing soft and clear in the evening breeze, and the sound is purely peaceful. In the growing dark, I can see lights coming on in windows up and down the street, neighbors settling in for the night, safe in their homes because someone cared enough to warn them what danger looks like. That's legacy enough for any man.